What's on the table today?
With Ramadan only a few days away, it was only right that the first episode of What's on the Table was all about the holy month. During the episode, we speak to brother Noor, who many of you will know for his Instagram handle, Strong Believers. I'm sure you've seen him on my story plenty of times, so I'm sure many of you guys will know who he is. His page shares some amazing Islamic reminders, which he really gives in a very easy to consume way. He gives practical steps towards implementing Islam into your life that really I believe anyone can take and be engaged with.
So, what do you discuss during today's episode?
Well, today's episode was very much to do with eating during Ramadan and training during Ramadan. We ask Noor questions such as, what's the best foods to eat during Suhoor, during Iftaar, and also the sorts of foods you should avoid eating. And I've also asked him loads of questions in regards to gymming during Ramadan, as I know many of you guys and girls will want to maintain your gym routine during Ramadan, and you won't want to lose the gains that you've made throughout the year. So Noor gives us some amazing advice, which I really feel that everyone can implement during Ramadan, if you really are one of those keen gym goers. Those who follow Halal Food Diary will know that I put a questionnaire out not too long ago, giving you the opportunity to ask any questions that you'd like to have answered. And I've really tried to ask as many of them as possible. Some of them were quite funny, so I think you'll enjoy what's coming up. The Strong Believers page, I'd say more on YouTube, really promotes living a healthy lifestyle. And Noor really shares a lot of tips in terms of gym and training. So I really thought he'd be the best person to answer these questions. Finally, towards the end of the episode, in fact, probably more importantly, Noor gives us a beautiful Imaan booster, which will really get us ready for the month of Ramadan. So I hope you enjoy the episode and really find it beneficial, and stay tuned for what we've got coming up. Assalamu alaikum, bro.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How you doing, bro?
Alhamdulillah, bro. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. Always good to see you, man. When did I last see you? Went for lunch recently, no?
Yeah, a few days ago, right? In Farringdon.
Where did we go?
Did we actually meet in Farringdon? Or no, we went to in Holborn. We went to Zaha Grill,
yeah.
Honolly's restaurant.
I love the food there, man.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. What do you normally get from there?
I usually get the mixed box, the mixed rice box. So the chicken, lamb, and then I just drown it in. Have you seen that sauce they have? It's like it's like a raita. If you know what raita is, it's like yogurt and cucumbers and stuff. What about you?
MashaAllah, I normally get the rice as well. I haven't tried anything else. I just once I like something, I stick to it. I've been getting a mixed rice bowl.
What do you have otherwise for lunch?
I normally go to the high street where there's loads of different food places. So I just get something, maybe rice, chicken, lamb, sometimes Chinese, just whatever I'm feeling, to be honest.
You don't bring stuff from home, or?
No, but I need to start doing that because it gets quite
so much
expensive.
money doing that.
Yeah, I'm guessing you eat out every day, don't you?
Bro, it's so bad. Being a blogger or a food blogger, man, you're always looking for new content and stuff. So now that I've moved jobs, actually, where I'm based, there's a lot of halal restaurants. So I'm just trying to check out as many of them as I can and do a review on them. So
one thing everyone's probably wondering is why you haven't added on so much weight. They don't see you, but they probably think you're some proper fat guy.
Bro, even my parents, they say to me, you should be a lot fatter than you actually are. And even at work recently, when I told people I had a blog, they were like, shouldn't you be fat? No, I have put on some weight, but I need to start gym soon, inshallah. Do you know what?
Inshallah.
I'm paying for a membership, but I just don't go. Quite often I go home and my mum and dad would be like, can you just cancel your membership now? Because I haven't been since 2018.
Wow.
And I've just been paying, subhanAllah, so bad.
Why aren't you going?
I'm just lazy, man. Getting to the gym is the easy part, but actually doing stuff there is hard. So I can get myself there, but I'll get there and I'll be like, what do I do now?
Would you not have a routine, or you don't know how to exercise?
No, maybe I should get some tips from you after this. No, but I'll get there and I'll have a plan. So maybe if I'm training arms or whatever it may be, but I think it's just the motivation to keep going. So I'll do a few exercises and I'll be like, I'm going to go home now. I think it's just, you get tired after a long day of work. So I'll come home from work and the last thing I want to do is just go out again. So
that's the thing with me. Whenever I go gym, straight after work, I don't come home first. I go straight to the gym, because if I come home, then you're going to get in the zone of just relaxing and winding down.
You go straight from work straight to the gym.
Yeah.
So just
And-
take your stuff with you.
Yeah, I take my stuff with me because I park my car at the station.
Okay.
So on the way back, it's on the way as well. So it makes it easy for me to just go to the gym. We should come.
Inshallah. You're gonna give me some PT session, yeah?
Of course, man.
Inshallah. Firstly, thank you so much for joining me on my podcast.
Of course. It's
You're-
my pleasure.
You're one of the top people that I wanted to speak to because, mashallah, you have a lot of knowledge on the training aspect of things, gym, but you don't speak so much about it on your own page anymore. I've noticed.
About gym.
Yeah, like, back in the days when you started Strong Believers, you used to sort of have an equal balance between like training and the Islamic reminders, but I feel like you've obviously reduced how much gym stuff you do. Is there like any particular reason for that, or?
Yeah, so one of the reasons is that I wanted to focus more on like just the da'wah sort of stuff and the reminders.
Inshallah.
And even when I did a poll on my page, I asked people what is the main reasons that they are following that page, and most of the people said that it's for the Islamic content.
Okay.
So I wanted to focus more on that side, and I did want to continue doing the gym side of stuff, but it's just more about time. So perhaps I'll get someone else to maybe do that side of the thing, because I want the page to be like a platform where different people can come on and do da'wah and do different types of push different types of content.
So like other people may be able to share reminders as well, or is
Yeah,
that what you mean?
yeah, possibly reminders, even with gym, whether it's to do with maybe cooking, food. There could be different sort of stuff, but whatever's beneficial, then hopefully, as time goes on, maybe we can incorporate that kind of stuff in there.
Nice, mashallah. I hope you don't mind that today. I think the focus will be very much on gym and eating, because obviously, subhanAllah, Ramadan is coming up very soon. I think it's just over a month away.
Yeah, I think it's just about a month away now. I think it's about the 5th of May it's supposed to happen.
Okay,
So I think it's the 5th of April now. So
a month exactly.
yeah, about a month exactly.
Subhanallah.
SubhanAllah.
I think by the time I drop this episode, it will probably be just a few days away. But so as you know, I did a poll on my page a few days ago asking people what kind of things, food related and training related, any questions they have, any concerns they have, like in terms of dieting during Ramadan. So there was loads of questions people had. A lot of them are things that I also think about and worry about, because obviously, for example, I can't say this as myself, but people who go gym, they'll be worrying, okay, when Ramadan comes in, am I going to lose my gains? Or like me, for example, when I go to work, the first thing I do when I get to work is get a coffee. So I may be a bit worried, how am I going to get myself energized throughout the day, when I think the fasts are going to be like 18, 19 hours this year, aren't they?
Yeah, something like that.
subhanAllah.
Yeah.
So obviously I want to make sure that during suhoor, I'm eating the right foods so that I've got that energy throughout the day, and I have no sort of expertise in these kind of things. So it'd be great to get your sort of thoughts and any input on that. So like, for example, what do you have for suhoor?
For suhoor, normally I'd have maybe eggs or rice, chicken, general stuff that you have. I try to avoid anything salty,
Okay.
because it's the salty foods, and like samosas, and like if you get the ones that are already
Pre-made.
pre-made,
Yeah.
if you buy those ones, they have a lot of salt in it, and other foods like chocolates and crisps and all of these kind of things, they're very bad to have.
Bro, these are my favorite things to eat, man.
Really, subhanallah, you're gonna have it tough then this year.
It's going to be
But
tough.
those are the stuff that, because it contains a lot of salt,
Okay.
it will make you thirsty throughout the day. So if you avoid those kind of things, and maybe have stuff like watermelon, just plenty of liquids, water. You could have stuff like rice pudding, which is still a little bit sweet, but that will give you that fullness and it will give you energy. The good thing about rice is that it's a complex carbohydrate. That means that it takes a lot longer to break down.
Okay.
So throughout the day, you have more energy because it's breaking down into bits. So it's coming throughout the day.
Okay.
Whereas if you have simple carbohydrates, that gives you energy quickly, but then you're sort of like, you run down by the end of the day.
By afternoon time, you're already starting to sort of feel hungry.
Yeah. So if you search even on Google, the difference between complex carbohydrates and simple, and look at the foods that there are, I would say you should try to have simple carbohydrates for iftar and complex for suhoor.
Okay.
But complex is actually better for iftar as well, because you don't want to get a sudden boost of energy and then to go downhill. So if you can have complex carbohydrates, it's actually better for you, like rice, have chicken.
During suhoor?
During suhoor, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you know what? During suhoor, I think just the time of the night that it is, like if I've just woken up, I usually just try and grab something quick. Like sometimes it's really bad, but I wake up and I've got like 15 minutes left till Adhan. So I'm just like quickly eating something. So would you recommend that you give yourself like 30, 45 minutes to have a proper meal so that you can get all those carbohydrates that we really need to stay awake?
Yeah, so if you give yourself at least half an hour, then that should be plenty of time.
Do you wake up for suhoor, or do you just eat and sleep, or what do you usually do?
Well, it depends. If it's like a weekend night where I'm not working, then I would most likely stay up, and then I would have suhoor, and then I would go to sleep.
Okay.
So I would have had my iftar. I would have gone to the masjid for tarawih and stuff. Then I would have come home, relax and eat, and then go to sleep. But if it's during the day, during the week where I'm working, then I would sleep and then I would wake up maybe like 20 minutes before, 20 minutes before, have something small, and then go back to sleep.
What about in terms of drinking like water, and what sort of liquids would you recommend? Because I know myself, like I'll have my suhoor, I'll go upstairs, brush my teeth, come down, and I'll have like 2 minutes where I'm just drinking as much water as I can possibly get into me. But surely that's not the best thing to do.
To be honest, that's what I do as well.
Really?
I think maybe about a bottle and a half before sleep, just under a liter. I'll try to have before suhoor, not at once, but just break it into little bits, because you need that water. Is gonna come into need throughout the day. But stuff like watermelon is very good for keeping you hydrated as well. So if you can have that, and you can have fruits. And if you can have dates, the Prophet ﷺ recommended dates for suhoor.
Okay.
So that's definitely something we should have, and it has barakah in it because it's sweet as well and gives you energy. So definitely.
And then, so you mentioned that we should try and avoid salty foods. I feel like something a lot of Asians would do, and I don't know if you Afghans might do this as well, but like whatever we had for dinner the day before, we might try and have for suhoor. So would you say that that's probably not always the best idea? Like, say, for example, you had a nice curry, or like, say, for example, you went out for pizza and then you had some left over and you're like, yeah, that's my suhoor sorted. But it's probably going to be counterproductive, right? Like, I remember last year, I think we did suhoor together once and we had pizza. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
And then as soon as we were on our way back home, man, I was already feeling thirsty. Or like, you get that feeling that you need to drink something. So would you recommend that you definitely avoid these kind of foods?
Yeah, definitely avoid it. Like we do that as well in my house. When we have iftar, the leftover foods, we have it for suhoor. But alhamdulillah, my mum, she's quite health conscious, and she tries to avoid having too much salt in food and having things that are fried and all of these kind of things. So even our iftar is generally quite healthy. Like for example, for iftar, my mom tends to we have a date, and then we have water. Then my mom normally makes soup, and soup is really, really good for iftar because it's rich in water, so it'll keep you hydrated. And the water that you missed out on throughout the day, you make it up a lot quicker through that than if you were to just drink loads of normal water. And the other thing is that soup, your body is able to absorb the energy from it a lot quicker. It's easier to digest, and it's not too heavy on your stomach. So then when you go to pray and when you do other things afterwards, you're not going to be weighed down, like especially for tarawih. If you eat too much for iftar and you're bloated, you're just going to want to sit down and lay down and sleep straight after.
Yeah. Sometimes those burps smell as well, man. Have you seen those biryani burps during tarawih? Subhanallah, it's distracting. But also I feel like when I have a really heavy iftar, like you said, I'll be standing up in tarawih, and I just can't focus as well, because obviously you're just feeling sluggish from all the food you've eaten and stuff, especially when like you've had not a very healthy iftar. But do you think there's anything wrong with like once in a while going to have like a burger or something that you really crave? Because like when I'm fasting, it gets to like 4 p.m. and obviously you've gone through a day of work and you've seen your colleagues having lunch and stuff, and I'm just craving like a juicy burger, man. So do you think it's okay to just indulge sometimes during Ramadan?
Yeah, I think from time to time it's okay. But if you do it, like if you make it like a constant habit, then you're just gonna add on a lot of weight that
Yeah, I feel like sometimes you can like go into Ramadan and your intention is I'm going to lose weight during Ramadan, but you
Yeah.
can come out having gained weight.
Exactly, yeah. Because people overeat and they overcompensate for what they would have eaten throughout the
Okay.
day. And the foods that they eat, they don't realize how high it is in calories and how rich it is in calories. So they would have loads of like fried foods. They would have dessert. They'll have cake. They'll have all sorts of things throughout for iftar that they wouldn't normally eat in a day. But because of their cravings, the cravings are at a high. Because they've not eaten anything throughout the day, then they overcompensate and end up adding weight as opposed to losing weight.
What would you recommend as like some things that people can try and implement into the iftar, like a few dishes or a few like what would you say is the best thing to eat at iftar? Because obviously you've been eating away at any energy you had from the food and suhoor, and you need a quick hit of energy. People who maybe don't enjoy soup, like me personally, I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of soup. What other foods would you say that people can have at iftar time?
Well, I would say the first thing is to do is obviously have the date, which is sunnah, then have water, then have soup. If you don't like soup, then you could just go into your mains. But as mains, I would recommend like rice, chicken, fish, things that are high in carbohydrates and high in protein, because you need that protein for your muscles to rebuild and for your muscles to be energized, and that's where the carbohydrates come in. So you need a good foods that are rich in both of those things. So eggs are good as well for iftar and for suhoor. But most people won't be eating that because they think that having eggs is only for breakfast. But I would say mainly chicken, rice. They're very good to have.
Do you cook your own iftar?
From time to time,
Yeah.
sometimes because my gym closes at 10 o'clock.
Okay.
So if I want to go straight after iftar, then I might have only 40 minutes or half an hour training. So what I used to do was I would make a sandwich, tuna sandwich, a couple of those, and I'll take some rice. I'll take a banana. I would make a milkshake smoothie with banana or some almonds and stuff in it, and then I'll take it to the gym. I'll break my iftar there. I would pray, and then I'll have maybe half an hour left of a workout, and that's straight after eating. So I don't really recommend that because you shouldn't train as soon as you've eaten. I tend to train just before, but I'm sure we're gonna get to that in a bit.
Don't worry, man. There's a lot of questions people had in terms of sort of training.
Yeah.
That will come to inshallah. But no,
Inshallah.
interesting to see that you do make your own iftar. I mean, it's really bad on me, but subhanAllah, I'm so lazy when it comes to cooking, man. I'm sure you'll agree. Ramadan seems to be a time where there's a heavy burden on the mothers and the sisters because they're also fasting, but they're spending the whole day cooking or in the kitchen. I've definitely, inshallah, tried to make a conscious effort to cook my own iftars or do as much as I can. In case my mum's ever listens to this, sorry mum if I don't, but like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's also a responsibility on us to also make our own foods and help out as well.
Absolutely, man. But I think something even more important than that is that people make Ramadan about eating when
so true.
it's meant to be the complete opposite. It's meant to be where your body's weakened, but your heart is like strengthened. So, but what people do is their hearts still get harder. Their hearts become hard because they're eating so much. They don't realize that overeating is one of the main causes of a hard heart. And if you don't want to harden your heart, then you need to eat less. And that's throughout the year, let alone Ramadan, which is meant to be mainly that you focus on your spirituality and your heart.
Can you elaborate what you mean by a hard heart?
By hard heart, I mean where your heart stops feeling and your heart is dead to spirituality. For example, you might recite the Quran or you might hear the Quran and you don't feel anything. Your heart's not moved. You might be sinning, but you don't feel fear. You're not affected in any way. You don't feel like you've transgressed the limits of Allah. And the scholars say that a hard heart is like the biggest punishment that there is. There's nothing greater of a punishment than a hard heart, because that's what leads you astray. That's what stops you from doing good deeds. That's what doesn't prevent you from committing sins. When your hardest heart, you continue to commit sins and you won't reflect on it. You won't think, subhanallah, what have I done? I've just transgressed against my own soul and against Allah, someone will come to you and say, don't you fear Allah? You're going to stand in front of Allah and be questioned about this. And you say, oh, don't worry about me. Like, that's a sign of a hard heart. When you're committing sins, you're missing the wajibat and all of these things, and you don't
even
care.
feel bad about
and
it.
you don't feel bad. That's the worst thing that you could have. If a person's committing sins and they feel, you know what, I've wronged my soul, that person has hope, because that means that their heart is not as hard as it could be, because they're still feeling something. And that's a rahmah from Allah, the fact that He's allowed you to feel that, and that means that He wants you to come back to Him.
I guess it's also a sign of Imaan as well, isn't it? That you have that fear of Allah and that belief.
Exactly, yeah.
SubhanAllah. So yeah, it's so true. I agree, man, that Ramadan really does seem to be a time where we just think about food, and the whole day we're thinking about the end goal, which is iftar, and we can actually eat, as opposed to focusing on what the purpose of the month is. There's one hadith that really stands out to me, which is, and you can correct me if I incorrectly say it, but it's like, the one who lives to see a Ramadan and doesn't have all his sins forgiven, then may his nose be rubbed in dust or in dirt. So it's basically saying that Ramadan is a chance to have your sins forgiven, and if you miss out on this opportunity, then it's embarrassing that you've let that happen to you.
Yes, subhanAllah. Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, and that only happens if you work on your heart. It's not the actions of the heart are way greater than the actions of the limbs. In terms of Taraweeh and all of these things, they're all good, but they're actions of the limbs. Actions of the heart is where your heart is softened, where you're affected by the Quran, you're closer to Allah, you have more tawakkul on Allah, you have more sincerity towards Allah, you have more ikhlas, and all of these things, they're actions of the heart, and that's what you're supposed to build throughout Ramadan, so that you remove it from the disease of the heart as well, like hasad, like evil jealousy. You remove it from envy, you remove it from thinking bad about people, stopping from backbiting. So it's not just about, when you're fasting, you're not fasting from food, you're fasting from all sins,
all these other things,
and from all of these other kind of categories. But people make it only about food, and they overeat and overindulge, and then that puts obviously more pressure on the families and stuff as well to cook more. Like, someone will come home and they'll be like, why haven't you cooked this, and why haven't you cooked that? I haven't eaten all day. But it's not about eating.
You're not giving that person who you're asking the opportunity to make the most of their own Ramadan, because as much as this is our own Ramadan and our own journey throughout a month, our mothers or our sisters or whoever else is cooking for us, that's also their month, isn't it, to draw closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we have to give them the opportunity and not overburden them. But I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you mind if you touch briefly on, they say that the fasting is for Allah. I think it's a hadith where it basically says that the reward for fasting is for Allah. Do you know what I'm trying to get at?
Yeah, because it's
why is this? Why do they differentiate between everything else and fasting?
I'm not sure about how they differentiate it, but because with fasting, it's something that only you and Allah knows. Especially if you're doing voluntary fasts, then only Allah knows that you're fasting. Everyone else might be eating around you. You might just refrain from eating something, but no one will know that you're fasting.
Okay.
But Allah knows that you're fasting.
As opposed to if you're praying, people can physically see you praying.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's one of them, and it's sincerity. There's sincerity comes into play as well, because when you're withholding yourself from something that's halal, but for the sake of Allah, and you're seeking reward, then again that's something very noble. But as for the full explanation of the hadith and stuff, then I don't know.
MashaAllah, Noor, Jazakallah khair, bro.
Yeah.
If we carry on talking a bit more about iftar, what would your advice be in terms of how to structure your iftar? Would you recommend that you have a date, and not necessarily like what Islam says, but your own sort of advice? Would you say the adhan goes, you have a date, you go straight and do your salah, and then you come back and eat? Or would you maybe say that you can have a date, have a bit of a bite to eat? Or would you say eat to your heart's content and then go pray? Pray Maghrib. What would you advise?
So I would say before iftar, I would say have your wudu ready.
Okay.
And you should also make your dua. So you're ready there, you're making dua, and then when the food is ready, you eat a little bit just till like you're satiated, like you have enough energy, and you feel a little bit replenished. So maybe like up to 5 minutes after iftar, you're eating, and then you go and pray, and then maybe you can eat a bit more afterwards. But it's up to you, whichever is up to the person.
Yeah.
But I normally do that. I eat for a few minutes, and then I'd pray, and then I'd go and eat a bit more.
Because I feel like sometimes I can keep eating and eating and eating, and subhanAllah, it's like I've forgotten about salah. Or it could be the opposite, where you like sometimes I'll have a date and then I'll go and pray, and I come back and I'm like, oh, do you know what? I'm not even hungry anymore. Like, because your stomach shrinks while you're fasting, you don't need as much food.
Yeah.
And as soon as you've had that first bite to eat, from there it's like sometimes if I go out for iftar, I'll order so much because in my head I'm like, yeah, I've starved myself the whole day. I'm so hungry, but then I have a few bites and that's it. Like, why is that? What happens to our body that makes that happen?
Well, your stomach shrinks, but it's also beautiful to see that the human body, it doesn't need much to survive. So the fact that you can eat just a little bit and you're fine, then it shows that you don't actually need to eat too much throughout the year as well. So that's the main thing to focus on, to not focus on eating too much and to compensate on what you've missed out, but to just make sure that you have enough, that you're satiated. And that's the advice of the Prophet ﷺ as well, that he said that you should eat till you're satiated, as in like that you have enough energy, and then if you must eat more, then have a third food, a third water, and a third air. What a lot of people do is they think that the sunnah is to have a third food, a third water, and a third air. But the Prophet ﷺ said, if you must eat more, then have a third. So before that, it's just you have enough that keeps you going. Like that's the Prophet said that there's nothing worse for the son of Adam to fill than his stomach. So like we said, it's one of the things that harden the heart.
SubhanAllah. Bro, if we can now touch briefly on gym and training in Ramadan, because when I put the poll out, this seems to be sort of what people were most interested in. And firstly, I guess, do you train during Ramadan?
Yeah, so during Ramadan, I normally train about an hour before iftar.
Okay.
So I wouldn't do like a full-on session. I'll do about maybe 70% or 75% of what I'd normally do throughout the year.
Okay.
So
is that in terms of like reps or in terms of weight that you're lifting, or?
In terms of weight.
Okay.
So I wouldn't want to put the same amount of pressure on my body as I would throughout the year, because you're not eating anything and you could possibly faint or something, and your body won't be able to take that because you've literally got no liquid in you and you've got no food in you. So I'd go about 70% in terms of weight, and in terms of what's the word for it?
Your capability, or would you say?
Of capability, basically, yeah. But I'll train about an hour before for about 40 minutes. Then I'd come home, shower, and eat, iftar. Then I'd make my way to the masjid.
And would you say that 70% would change for different people? Like, say for example, you've been gymming for 5 or 10 years, then would it be different for someone who's just like, say you've just started gymming a few months ago and now Ramadan's come in for you? Should you maybe go a bit less, as opposed to someone who knows exactly what they're doing? Maybe they're like a PT or they're in the industry. Would you say you could switch out that percent, or?
Possibly. It's a good question, because alhamdulillah, we have something called the muscle memory, which your body, if you've been training for a long time, your body's developed what's called the muscle memory. So even if you stop training for a few weeks, you're able to get back into where you were, like literally within a week or two, because your body's remembered what your muscles are like and your strength, and you're able to reach that very, very quickly. It's like, for example, when you've memorized like a surah of a Quran, that's your muscle memory as well, but that's in your head, in your brain. Or
like if you haven't ridden a bicycle for a long time and you get on it, after a few minutes you're like, oh yeah, I remember how to do this.
Exactly. That's your muscle memory. So if you've been training for a long time, you shouldn't worry about losing your gains and stuff, because your muscle memory will help you get back to where you were before anyway. And your body will release toxins during that time because you're not eating as much, and your hormone levels will balance out. So when you go back into training, and also you will lose fat as well, and you lose water weight. So when you go back into training, you're actually coming back more fresh, and plus your body needs a rest anyway. So Ramadan is actually the best time to give your body rest.
So it's not necessarily a time where you should be trying to increase your gains or your muscle, whatever. Maybe better to just maintain or stick, or just maintain that routine and maintain the level you're at. Is that what you'd recommend?
Yeah, so I would say either maintain or cut during that time.
Okay.
I wouldn't recommend bulking during that time. It's because it's difficult, because throughout the day you're not eating much, and the iftar to suhoor gap that window is very, very small. So you're not going to be able to get too much of your calories in anyway. So it's better to not overeat at that time and just use it to maintain or cut for about a month. And then afterwards you can go back to bulking.
In terms of like what your workout should be, do you think that maybe you should avoid cardio or avoid weights, or what, like do a mixture of both? What would your recommendation be? Like I can imagine, like whenever I go to the gym, the very few times I do go to the gym, if I go in Ramadan, like I know if I do cardio, if I run on the treadmill for like 10 minutes, it will just do so much, but like it will just make me so thirsty. Whereas I can do weights, or I can do some weights and I won't feel as bad. So do you think that cardio is maybe makes your fast more difficult than doing weights, or?
Yeah, so I'd say that cardio would make it difficult because you'll get thirsty. But I'd say walking is recommended. You could walk and they'll actually energize you. Like it gets the blood flowing in your body and you actually feel more energized. Most of us, when we're fasting, we think that we don't want to lose energy, so we stay in one spot. But you actually end up losing more energy that way and you become more sluggish and lazy to do anything throughout the day. But it's better that if you go for like a maybe 10-15 minute walk or half an hour walk even, that's actually so much better than to do cardio. But weights is fine, I would say. Just so long as you're not going to the max, you should cut it down a little bit.
One question that someone asked, which was, I'm trying to lose weight and I feel like Ramadan has come in at this time. What can I do during Ramadan in terms of my dieting and my gymming routine and what I do in the gym that can facilitate me to lose weight? What would your recommendations be for someone who's trying to maybe lose some pounds during Ramadan? Would you say like this is not the best time to do it because it will just do more damage to you, or do you think that it's something they can really do?
Well, I'll say if they're trying to lose weight, then they should still do that. Even outside Ramadan, if someone's trying to lose weight, they should know a rough idea of how many calories they're getting in. And they have to be on a caloric deficit, meaning they have to be having less calories in than they actually burn.
Okay.
So when they have that measurement, say they need 2,000 calories, for example, they can still do that same thing. They have 2,000 calories between Iftaar and Suhoor, and they'll still lose weight. And if they want to lose further weight, they can start reducing a little bit more.
But surely that's dangerous, man, during Ramadan, like because you're not giving your body the water and the nutrients it needs throughout the day. Surely could it not do damage to you?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Unless you go on an extreme of just hardly eating anything, then yeah. But your body only needs a small amount of food for it to survive and for it to work. So you don't need to go crazy on it. So long as you eat well in Iftar and you eat well in Suhoor, but obviously you still remain in your caloric deficit, then you will be fine.
Do you know what? I remember you did a video on this a while back, and I think the funniest part of it was like, don't worry about your physical gains. Just this is the time to make spiritual gains.
Yeah,
mashallah.
yeah. That's the focus of Ramadan, man.
Yeah. When would you recommend, I guess, for people to take naps throughout the day and get enough time in sleeping? Because of course we can't neglect our sleep, right? Would you say that, do you maybe take naps throughout the day when you come home from work? Because like Iftar is going to come in at like 9 something now, isn't it? 9:15 or something. If you then have your Iftar, you go for Tarawih and that finishes at maybe 12, and then you come home and you maybe have like 1 hour of sleep before you wake up for Suhoor, and then you go to sleep again, and some people wake up for, I don't know, work at like 7 a.m. That's not much sleeping time, is it? What would your, like, what's your sleeping pattern like during Ramadan?
I don't have too many naps throughout Ramadan, but I would say if a person can have a nap in the afternoon, then I would recommend that, or a small nap straight after Asr.
Yeah.
So then they've prayed Asr, they can have a little nap, then they have Iftar, and then they can do the rest of their worship.
Or even like at the prayer room at my work, we have like a little bed there. I think it's also used as a first aid room. So I'm thinking like that 1 hour, I can just get a 1 hour nap rather than taking 1 hour lunch.
Yeah, you know, I used to drive to work. So my car was parked in a car park, and then every lunch within Ramadan and outside, I used to have a nap in there.
Really?
Every lunchtime, yeah.
Well, what, you didn't want to like eat anything?
Well, I would eat while I would be at my desk.
Okay.
So I could eat at my desk, and then I'd go and have a nap.
Find a mad loophole in the system.
Yeah, bro, you have to do it, man.
And people who are working long shifts, well, like, what recommendations would you have for them? Because I think one of the questions someone asked was, I work long shifts like throughout the day. Maybe I start early in the morning and finish late at night. What steps can they maybe take to, and I guess any tips you have for them in terms of making their day easier for them? Is there anything that you may think of?
Yeah, I would say to if they can find time to nap, then they should nap, and then in the night time to not just waste it. So if they're doing if they're praying tarawih, then they could do that, and they can then have a nap and then wake up for suhoor, as opposed to just staying up the whole night, because then they're gonna feel that fatigue the next day. So it depends on how long they're working and where they can fit their naps and stuff. So it differs from person to person. They just have to work out what's best for them.
What's best for them, yeah. Another question that a lot of people asked, and I know I can recall having the similar problem a few years ago when I was studying for exams during Ramadan. Like, when do you think is the best time to revise? Because, like, if you're at school or you're at college the whole day and you want to come home and study for your GCSEs or A levels, whatever it may be, when would you say is the optimal time to revise? Would it be like after you come from Tarawih, or would it be like straight after Fajr or during the day, or when do you think the best time would be?
If it's during exam period and they don't have to go to school or anything and they have the whole day at home, then I would say probably after Fajr. I've not been in a position where I had to revise, but there's been times where I've read or I've wanted to memorize something, and I've done it in the night time, straight after Fajr. So that works for some people, but they need to see when their brains are working the best and when they have that available time. So again, it would differ from person to person.
I guess all these questions is very much like finding what works best for you.
Exactly.
Because what works for you might not work for me, purely because maybe you're more of a morning person and I'm more of a late someone who wakes up quite late. So I guess a lot of these questions that people are asking, I think the best answer would just be to find what works for them. Maybe try a few different things and see what works best.
Exactly. And one of the key things is that know yourself. If you know yourself, you know when you're tired, you know when you're working at your best, and you see when you're tired and when you have available time. All of these things, when you know yourself, it makes it a lot easier for you.
Do people have to, and I sort of know the answer to this before I ask, but something someone asked was, I've got exams coming up, do I still have to fast? So it was a young person who asked, so like just any beneficial advice or to see how you can give them, I think would be fantastic.
Well, I would say that I'm not going to give the fatwa myself, but I've heard the mashayikh mention the fatwa that you do have to still fast, because that's something obligatory. You can't leave something obligatory for something that's not obligatory. Like these exams and stuff, they're important, but they're not as important as Ramadan, and that's one of the 5 pillars of Islam. So you can't neglect that for that. And plus, success comes from Allah. So you need to have trust in Allah, and you need to do your bit, and then Allah will facilitate the rest. But yeah,
SubhanAllah, it's a tricky one, because like even me, I remember I think last year or the year before I had the whole of Ramadan and then I had my exams after. So it was a struggle, not just in terms of revising, but because I felt like I couldn't get the most out of the month. Like I couldn't go Tarawih as much as I wanted to, and you can't do extra ibadat or whatever it is. You can't use your time as well as you want to, purely because like you've got an exam bang in the middle of Ramadan or after Ramadan. But I guess it's just something that, again, you have to find your own personal balance or make that time where you can.
Yeah, it's like one of the tests of life. This is as a Muslim, this is one of our tests. Like, what are we gonna put first? Are we gonna put what Allah wants, or are we gonna put something else first? And through like Allah's testing us through ease and difficult times. So you need to try and be your best at both ends.
Bro, this question here is quite funny. Someone asked, can I go to the cinema during Ramadan because Aladdin is coming out? What would you say to them?
Not from a fatwa perspective of saying what's halal or haram. I would say avoid it, not to go, because you wanna be during Ramadan, especially. You want to be in an environment where you're not gonna be contaminated with with haram. You're not going to be looking at things that you shouldn't be looking at. Because one of the things with movies, and because a lot of us, we fall into this, like when it comes to TV or films and stuff like that, we're not supposed to be looking at the opposite gender, right? But when we're watching a movie, we might be looking at the opposite gender for 2 whole hours, and we don't bat an eyelid. Like, it's all fine. On the street, astaghfirullah, I have to look down. But what about when you're watching a film? And especially in films where a person is like half naked, there's sexual content, and there's swearing, and there's all sort of things, that these things affect the heart. If you, and this is how you can test yourself as well, is that when you see these things, when you see naked women on TV, or even naked men, and they're showing their aura, or they're swearing, or you're seeing all sorts of filth, is your heart being affected by it or not? And this is how you know if your heart is hardened. Because if your heart is just accepting all of these things, it doesn't even dislike it, things that Allah hates, you're fine with it, you're watching it, there's music, all of these things, then you're not making the best of your Ramadan.
Also, I guess there is some sort of aspect of, it depends for different people, right? Like, if your Iman is very strong and you're able to abstain from these things, then it'll be very easy. But for someone who's already struggling with doing the bare minimum, then maybe you can be a bit more forgiving to them, I guess. I guess each person's journey with Islam and their deen is different, right? I'm sure you'll agree.
Yeah, definitely. But I think it's not about looking down on them or anything like that, because all of us struggle with different things. But it's more about recognizing it and knowing where the status of that thing is in Islam, so then you can work on it. Because if you make the excuse for yourself that my Iman is weak and stuff, then your Iman might always be weak, and you'll never work on giving something up.
That's very true. I guess you could keep using that as an excuse that, my Iman's weak, I can still do this, whereas we know that we shouldn't be doing so.
I think that's what the main thing is, acknowledging something and then working on it. Like, I remember years ago, every Ramadan, before I start practicing, every Ramadan what I'd try to do is, bit by bit, I would give something up. I knew something, I would know something is wrong, and I wouldn't give it up. But then when Ramadan came up, I would be like, I have to do something, even if it's small, I have to give that up this Ramadan, and I'll do that every year. I'll do that until, alhamdulillah, like I start practicing, and then worked on continuing to improve. But that's one of the things that we have to realize, that if you know something is wrong, you acknowledge it, and then you work on it. If you don't acknowledge it, and if you turn a blind eye to it, then you might never be able to overcome it.
No, I think that's great advice, because we need to maybe have small goals in place. Okay, within the next few days I'm going to work on, or next few months I'm going to work on cutting this thing out of my life, which maybe not even from a dini perspective, but something which is really holding you back, or some bad habits that you may have, whether it be smoking, or for me, maybe eating unhealthy food. So I might be like, for the next few months I'm going to try and cut down on a particular thing, with the end goal in sight that I'm going to make myself the best version of myself that I'm certain that I can be. But I guess it's only by taking these small steps that we can sort of work towards there, because it's very difficult to change things overnight, right? Like, you can't one day have all these things which you'd love to work on, and the next day wake up and be completely changed, exactly, right? Yeah. It takes time. Yeah,
it does take time. Yeah. One of the things that you could do is, if you're finding these things difficult throughout the day, then discipline yourself to not do it throughout the day, but then after iftar, or after you're not fasting, then to do it at that time. For example, music. If you find it difficult to give up, at least don't listen to music throughout the day. And that's one of the steps that I took as well. Like, when I was listening to music, I wouldn't listen to it during the fasting period, and then I'll maybe listen to it afterwards. But then that cuts down, because you only have a few hours anyway, and eventually you sort of detach from it. Like, you realize that you don't really need to listen to music.
Following on from what you're saying, what other things can people do during the day? If you give like some examples, rather than just saying, okay, read Quran, like maybe read a few verses on your way to work, or put aside an hour in the afternoon, or half an hour at a particular time. Like, what sort of steps can people take towards making the most of their month?
I'll say they should try to work on things that can keep the. I would say they should do stuff that they can continue after Ramadan. I would say that's the first thing. So some the wajibat, for example, the 5 daily prayers, and like praying on time and all of these kind of stuff, they should do that and they should focus on that the most. For example, instead of Taraweeh, if they know that they can pray Fajr in the masjid, and instead of doing Taraweeh in the masjid, then they should prioritize doing Fajr masjid over that, because that's something that's wajib, and Allah said that there's nothing more beloved to him than the things that are wajib. The things that are more beloved to him are the fara'id, and then his slave gets closer to him through doing voluntary actions, so voluntary fasting, voluntary prayers, and sadaqah, and all of these things, until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves that person. So those are the first things to do. Then I would say have a little timetable where you know when you're available and when you have energy and when you can focus, and try to keep consistent with that and be disciplined, because one of the focus of Ramadan is to be disciplined as well. So if you can only read 20 minutes a day or half an hour a day, then focus on that and keep doing that until you can do more. Don't try to do everything at once, because then you leave everything at once as well. So
I think following on from that, today the khutbah, the Imam said that it's best to plan before Ramadan, your action plan for the 30 or 29 days, as opposed to saying, okay, today is day 1 of Ramadan, I'm now going to start planning what time I'm going to put aside for certain things, because it may take you a week or 2 weeks during Ramadan to get into that routine. So why not plan ahead? Why not plan 1 week before Ramadan kicks in and say, okay, when Ramadan kicks in, this is what my timetable is going to be. Because I know sometimes you can leave it till a few days and you're like, wow, Ramadan's 2 days away, man. I'm not even prepared at all. Is that something you'd agree with? Maybe starting a week or 2 weeks in advance and thinking about what you're going to do, as opposed to leaving it till the first day.
Yeah, I would say even better than a week before. I'd say do it from now. Obviously the listeners might not be listening till maybe a week or a few days before Ramadan, but I would say that the work that you put in outside of Ramadan, you will see the fruits of it in Ramadan. So like the Salaf, the righteous scholars of the past, they would work and prepare for Ramadan 6 months before Ramadan. So not a week before, 2 weeks, but 6 months. They would work on their Imaan. They would work on, and that's why they would make the dua of Allahumma balighna Ramadan, like Allah allow us to reach Ramadan. So they would be preparing for it. And some of the Salaf used to say that they would live for Ramadan. So it's as if 6 months they're preparing for Ramadan, then 1 month it is Ramadan, then they would make dua for the next 5 months to say, Ya Allah, accept our Ramadan. It's as if they're living for Ramadan, subhanAllah.
May Allah allow us to be like them, bro.
Ameen.
Bro, just before we finish up, is there any other advice that you'd like to give the listeners in terms of making the most of the month? Any maybe nasiha you have for them, or any reminders or advice that people can take, and just to give them a bit of a boost? Because I even feel like myself, I really need that boost before Ramadan kicks in, inshallah.
Yeah, bro. So I would say the first thing is that Allah has made it very clear why He has sent Ramadan. And in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah mentions that He sent Ramadan so that you can develop taqwa. And taqwa is that which whatever you have in your capabilities to avoid the punishment of Allah, then you use that. That's what taqwa is. So you need to develop that. So whether it's good deeds, whether it's discipline, whatever you need to develop, that you develop it to avoid the punishment of Allah and you have the pleasure of Allah. And that you should enjoy Ramadan. Don't make Ramadan in a way where it's
counting
like a chore.
down the days for it to finish sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. I need to fast. I can't wait to eat. But not actually enjoy it, because every act of worship you need to enjoy. Why did the righteous scholars of the past, they love fasting? They would fast 1 day on, 1 day off, or they would fast. Some of them would fast almost every single day.
The whole year.
The whole year. And this isn't recommended, but some of them will actually do that. But it's an act of worship that they used to love. So we need to try and love Ramadan. We need to love fasting, and know that every single minute that we're fasting, we're being rewarded for it. And the reward of Ramadan is immense, subhanAllah. All your actions are multiplied, your deeds are multiplied. The shayateen, the smaller ones, the bigger ones are locked up. So it's a test or to see who you are in that month. That month is going to show who you are, because the shayateen are locked up, and that you're going to see how much you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you can't fast in that, if you're not fasting in that month, if you're not praying in that month, then what of your Islam do you actually have left? Because many people might be as they say, Ramadan Muslims, yeah, but that's actually a good thing. If you're at least fasting and praying in Ramadan, that's actually better than someone who's not doing it throughout the whole year.
But I feel like on social media, there's a lot of negative stigma towards people like this, or people calling each other out and saying, bro, you're just fasting or praying, and why are you praying now? It's Ramadan. Like, you don't pray throughout the year. But I think that's so damaging. That's so bad to say to someone. Like, maybe that one Ramadan will be the month that changes things for them forever. So I think that, yeah, I totally agree, man. That's something that me, myself, or everyone should avoid doing. They're calling people out for being Ramadan Muslims.
Yeah, bro. And a story that sort of goes along with that is one of the Salaf narrates this, and he says that I was traveling with my companions in the desert, and some robbers stopped us on the way, and they started to steal everything that we had, and they started to eat the food that we had. And they said that everyone started eating except one person, and the person that wasn't eating was their leader, was this gang's leader. So this guy asked him, he goes, why, how comes all your people are eating but you're not eating? And he said, I'm fasting.
SubhanAllah.
And he looks at him and he's like, you just robbed us.
Yeah.
How are you fasting? You're like, and he goes, that I left, I'm leaving a door back to Allah. So then a few years later, this guy, he's making tawaf, the one that got robbed, he's making tawaf, and he sees that same robber, that leader, and he sees him, his face is full of Noor, and he's making dua, and he can see him, he's exhausted from the worship that he's just been performing. And he goes to him and he says, are you not the same guy that robbed me a few years ago?
Yeah.
And he says, yes, I am. He goes, what happened? Like, how comes you're here? And he says, that day that I was fasting, that door that I left back to Allah, he goes, it opened. Like, I'm I'm back with Allah.
Wow.
So fasting is something amazing, and no matter what you can do, you should do it in Ramadan. Like, don't think that, I'm a hypocrite, I'm only doing it in Ramadan. If you that's because that comes from the shaitan. It's trying to put you down, it's trying to make you avoid doing it. And a lot of people think, if I don't do it throughout the year, then there's no need for me to do it now. But no, it's from the shaitan. And this is one of the problems of committing sins and not doing good deeds regularly, because it starts to make you feel like you're a munafiq. So this is one of the things to bear in mind, inshallah.
MashaAllah, bro, that was beautiful. Thank you so much. May Allah reward you for taking your time out to speak to us. I know, I'm pretty sure you're supposed to be at work right now, right?
I am, yeah.
So if your manager's listening, then I apologize. But Jazakallah khair, bro, that was beautiful. And inshallah, we should definitely sit down together again, and maybe after Ramadan, just reflect on other things. Can you tell me a bit about your podcast? Because I know you're doing more than just one now, isn't it?
Yeah, so I've got the Strong Believers podcast, and I've got the Al Muflihun podcast, which is in Farsi.
Okay.
And inshallah, the Pashto content will be coming out too. But the Al Muflihun is for the Afghan audiences,
okay,
where those who speak Farsi, Dari, and Pashto, and there'll be maybe lectures inshallah in the future. But for now, there's a podcast. It's a podcast with myself, and I have the practicing Afghan brothers come on as guests, and we discuss different topics. But the Strong Believers is in English, inshallah. So that's one of the main things that's going on in Strong Believers right now.
And that is like podcast as well as just your Instagram. So you've also got Strong Believers podcast, right? And will that just be like meeting with people and speaking to them and sharing reminders, or?
Yeah, so the Strong Believers podcast is just speaking to people, mainly mashayikh, mainly brothers who are practicing, maybe some brothers who are like into business, and they have maybe doctors or different sort of people with different qualifications that can come on and inshallah like shed light on things and maybe inspire people through the talks. But
and where can people find these?
They can find it on the links on Instagram on strong.believers, or they can go on our YouTube and just search up Strong Believers, and our YouTube channel will come up. And we're also on Google Podcasts and Spotify, and I think iTunes is coming up as well. So
I'll be waiting for my invite for an episode, yeah?
inshallah, definitely.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khair, bro.
Barakallah feekum.